Welcome guys back to another lecture in our How Colors Work in Game and Level Design section. In this one we're going to be talking about color layouts, and as I've alluded to in the last two lectures, we understood how colors as identifier works, we understand what glyphs and neutrals are, and now we're going to look at them inside our color layouts. So in this little lecture I'm going to be discussing the definition of a color layout, how canvas and objects work, and how glyphs and neutrals work with color layouts. So what is a color layout? Well, this is basically the distribution of contrasting colors in a scene or image. And this can also be for individual game assets such as models, sprites, and GUI elements. So as I've explained in the last few lectures and even the last few sections, when we talked about using different color schemes and different types of colors, what they bring in terms of the psychology and theory behind it, color layouts basically brings all that together, and they try to display something that the artist is trying to explain to the user or trying to show to the player in terms of what type of emotion and feeling. So if we were to take this example over here, some of our main colors here are blue, yellow, and green. So this would be considered a split complementary color scheme because we're using three of the main elements in this color. And as we can see, blue is pretty much the dominant one, and along with green and yellow being very subtle, so helping that blue. So blue obviously sticks out in the scene, and that would probably give an indication to the player that that is probably a safe house because blue represents calm. So basically, like I said, a color layout is bringing all that is distributing all those contrasting colors in a scene. A layout can either be spatially or sequentially. Now, spatially layout is basically two colors that are next to each other. So this is more often than not a scene such as the one we saw before where all the colors are pretty much all next to each other. Sequentially is basically contrasting colors that occupy the same area and alternate between each other. So an example would be the one that we see at the bottom of the screen, which is the different colors that are taking place in the same spot. And this is not mutually exclusive, so not one scene can have just one. In a layout, they can have both at the same time. It depends on what you want to show to the player. So example, let's say take a police siren. Police siren is pretty much going to alternate between blue and red, correct? Well, see, if you want to have a scene where a siren is going off in an area, you could have a sequentially siren going off and having the white car against that brick building. But also keep in mind that weight distribution plays a key role in designing a color layout. And what I mean by distribution, I'm talking about how weight helps identify which color is supporting the context for the other one. And in order to do that, you have to make sure that you allocate more space or time to one specific color and how to use it effectively in order to distribute the weight. So example is looking at the Mario scene here, where the basic weight distribution takes place in the background of the giant, I want to say pillars. Let's go with pillars. I'm not really sure. I never actually knew what they were, but let's go with pillars. So now, we're talking about weight distribution, so how heavy and a color looks in the scene. So both those colors in the back are very dark and very dark shades. So they give off a very heavy feel to them because they look distant but yet close at the same time. And Mario obviously is the character in the middle in all red. So as you can see, it's pretty much keeping red in the central part and having the two supporting pillars in the back, the darker shades, offsetting that. So distributing the weight so it's not all focused in one area, it keeps it balanced. Because don't forget, in this game, the player has to continuously walk forward. So obviously continually continually distributing that weight over the entire time of the level is really important so that the player does not feel that one side is heavier than the other one and then making them make a decision in terms of what direction to go in due to the fact that the weight distribution is not allocating the right play space. I know that was a bit confusing in terms of what I was explaining there, but think about it for a second. So let's look at this example again. Let's say we take off all of the right mushrooms, the right pillars, the background. So put your hand in front and pretend that all the right pillars are not there anymore. And now you have all the left pillars, so the green, the blue one, even the little pink one in the back, and Mario in the middle. Now, wouldn't it feel weird looking at that all your weight distributions all to the back, and there's nothing that supports the front? Now, wouldn't you feel that you'd probably have to go backwards because you feel like there's nothing there, it's empty spaces, there's nothing to support you? Think about that for a second. So in terms of level design, it's always important how you want to distribute your weight in your color layouts in terms of what type of shades and what type of accents will help support the dominant color in the scene. Now, when we look at canvas and objectives, so a color canvas is basically the context of which color objects stand out on and have meaning through contrasts. See, a canvas must never draw the player's attention as a focus point. Its main purpose is to support the identifier that the designer wants to showcase. Looking at the example right here of Limbo, we already know what the dominant is. Obviously speaking, yes, granted, I picked the image that had the player jumping in the middle and he's the only thing that's surrounding everything else. But look at how the background is. The background is light white gray. So obviously any element that's in the back is not drawing our attention. There's no contrasting hues that are pulling our eyesight there. Our eyesight's dictated directly on the color black, or black in general, the black shade or tone, which is the player. And also look at the eyes of the player. They're white dots. So having those little white dots on the player automatically makes us connect and look straight at the eyes. Even though we don't notice that, the player is actually a darker shade than the foreground that is in front. So the atmosphere, or like, you know, the grass and the foliage that's in front of us, the player is much more darker. And also pay attention to the foliage that is coming out of the ground. Look at the little gaps between them. If a player were to walk between that, you would see the different gaps, or see the player movement through that. But obviously focusing on the player is pretty much the key element here. So when you want to create a canvas or your main objectives, always make sure that you support your identifier and that everything else is secondary. Color objects. Now, these are colored elements that draw the player's attention. Right away, for sure, when you looked at the image to the right, the first thing that drew your attention was the fire, because red has that impulse. So the main task for color objects is to give the player instant recognition of what it is and what it does. So objects on an object layer can be in contrast with each other, but must be stand out from the canvas. So looking at the image to the right, the objects would most probably be the giant robot / creature that is firing lasers out of his eyes, and the supporting player who is shooting at it. That is pretty much what the layers of objects are identifying, but obviously the player's reaction is going to be towards what is happening in the middle of the screen. So that fire that is coming out of the player, coming out of the machine, the explosions. So that is going to give the player something to think about in terms of what they have to do in order to avoid any kind of incoming damage if that's what's going to be happening. Now, when looking at a sequential color object, so we looked at spatial, now we're talking about sequential, there must be a visible distinction of the change of colors. So, some examples of effective sequentials could be the crosshair of an FPS game. So example, let's say in this game we see here, the crosshair is green. Once he locked on a player, it turns red right away. That is indicating to the player that he is in a kill shot spot. Damage taken by an enemy. So example, let's say your body is let's say a light blue, whatever the case is, and you take damage, your body pulsates red. Oh, you know that you took a bit of damage. LED of a bomb. So let's say you go to place a bomb on a wall and it's red. Now to activate it, the bomb light turns green. So now you know it's active, so it's good to go. Don't forget red and green. Those different type of psychological ploys that they give us. Let us know that things are happening. So these are some examples of sequential color objects. Now when we look at glyphs and neutrals with color layouts. Now, in order to deliver an effective visual message to the player, a fusion of glyphs, neutrals, and color layouts must take place. And a well-established color canvas will become a neutral, while a glyph will be used to make color objects stand out. So, now looking at our example to the right in Portal, we know what our color objects are. They stand out right away. Our two secondary colors, blue and orange. And the color canvas, or the neutrals of the scene, are pretty much that light blue, dark, black, gray, and baby blue. Those are our neutrals. So as you can see, our color objects would be considered our glyphs. So now, when we tie this all together, when you want to design a level, keep in mind that your color canvas or your neutrals will always be the same thing. So that's how they work together. And the glyphs that you associate with your color identifiers are going to become your color objects. And you want to make sure that you support those color objects with an appropriate canvas. And in order to do that, you have to also choose a really well-established color scheme in order to support it, which also indicates that you have to pay attention to what colors you want to use, because certain colors will obviously have certain psychological reinforcements behind them. So as you can see, guys, everything's starting to come together slowly now. Now we're seeing how all of the psychological colors, how work together with different color schemes, and then how we tie that in to our color layouts alongside our glyphs and our neutrals. In the next few lectures, we're going to be talking about how 2 color identifiers work and 3 color identifiers work, and then talk about the different content variations that are associated with these, along with creating our own palette for when it comes time for us to design our own levels. And that's it, guys, for this lecture, and I'll see you guys in the next one.